We're recording.
Hey guys, and welcome to this edition of Talking About It with Open Door Men's Magazine. I'm W.Tanoé, founder of Open Door, and today I'm joined by Jonathan Watts, the magazine's resident historian. John, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, Yann. Good to talk to you.
Yes, lovely to have you. We've been trying to have this conversation for about 4 or 5 weeks, and it has not been easy to actually get us both to sit down like this. But it's quite a miracle to actually finally get to this.
It's the impacts of the lockdown, I think. Even though I'm not working at the moment so much out on the road, it's even more difficult to find time because there's so many other things to be doing with the family and with the children and etc. etc. So yes, good to finally get.
Crazy. It is. It's crazy that we thought that lockdown and being at home meant that we'd have more time for things, but actually we're just as busy, if not busier.
I was going to learn Spanish. I was going to learn guitar. That's 11 weeks, and I don't know any of that stuff. So
yeah. But it's fine. We're surviving, and this time is almost over, hopefully, and we can get back to. I don't want to say normal because I don't even know what normal is.
Yeah.
But what we know is that during that period of the lockdown, we were very busy, and we managed to bring out our first edition of Open Door Men's Magazine, which did really, really well. It was really, really needed. There was we love the feedback that we've got with the different articles, the different contributors, and different campaigns attached to what we've been doing. And so it was important for me to sit down with John today because I want to talk to each one of the columnists and talk in depth about their theme, the themes of their article, why they chose these themes, and anything like that. So let's dive right in. So, John, your article was about 2 virtues that I've really, really, really that I enjoyed. Virtues that I think that everybody should develop: humility and self-awareness. And it was linked to great men in history. So, why did you choose these 2 virtues especially, and what is the relevance of these 2 virtues for men as a whole?
I think one of the attractions for me for those 2 virtues is that it's very evident to me how fallible I am as a human being, and all of the gaps in my understanding and all of the mistakes that I make. A lot of the time, the mistakes that I make and the misunderstandings that I have, in the moment, I don't realize that I'm making a mistake or that my perspective on a certain issue is incorrect. And the barrier to that often is pride and having way too much self-assurance in our own positions. Obviously, we look to educate ourselves, and we look to gain as much information as we can, and we turn to the tools that we have available. A lot of them would be online. A lot of them these days would be social media. And obviously these things can be great and can really help us to enrich our understanding on different issues and different topics and help us gain new perspectives. But there is a danger, I think, sometimes that maybe we fall into the trap of reinforcing our existing position just by turning to these sources. We find ourselves in echo chambers or just having our biases confirmed by particular slants that things are presented. So that, I think the dangers of that is quite evident, that if you read the news, I think it was Denzel Washington said something that I liked. He said, if you read the news, you're misinformed. If you don't read the news, you're not informed. So I think you could go on. Are you still there, Yann? Your picture's frozen. Oh, you're back. Sorry. Yeah, so I think we run the risk.
Yeah, just for the big.
Yeah, we run the risk sometimes of just reinforcing incorrect positions. And humility and self-awareness help us to understand that that's what we're doing, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, do you think that these are things specific to men? You know, when we talk about having more humility, especially humility, do you think it's more of a male thing? You know, how does humility relate to manhood, masculinity?
Well, I mean, if you look at the way that a lot of boys would be socialized, it is a much more competitive and a much more rise to the top. If you want to be successful, if you want to be worth anything, it's all about rising to the top. So um, boys compete to be successful in sports through childhood, and therefore they gain validation through being successful. This isn't unique only boys, but predominantly I think society has developed in such a way, and now we see that what we would consider traditionally male characteristics, particularly related to toxic masculinity, right? Where people are, I guess, subordinating others and trying to impose their view and dismissing other people. It does tend to be an affliction which has affected men more. So I think humility and recognizing one's own weaknesses and fallibility can be a good antidote for those things that society might have taught us.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's definitely, you know, something that as young boys we're brought up with, you know, that aspect of, you know, just rise to the top, be the best that you can be strong. And in that, a lot of time we do forget the aspect, the opposite side, which is to actually be kind, to be humble, to be meek, and to actually recognize the things that we're not necessarily, when we're wrong, just plain and simple.
Definitely.
So, you know, when we talk about self-awareness, it's a different type of conversation. And so, to you, how important is it for men, you know, the men that we are, to be self-aware?
I think it's vital. I think it's if we believe that we have nothing to learn from speaking to others, we find ourselves in a very dangerous place, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and not just speaking to others generally, but also understanding another's point of view. Obviously, there are certain universal principles and things that most people have most people with a sensible understanding of life would understand these principles to be correct, right? You know, I'm talking about respecting others and not discriminating against people based on immutable characteristics. All these things I think we can all agree these are universal and good principles on which we should live. However, I think the interpretation of life and other areas, I think we can learn a lot from one another. I mean, at the moment, right, we see a lot of different responses to how the lockdown has been carried out in the UK, right? Mm-hmm. There's certain people who are fans of the lockdown and want the lockdown to continue and don't want any risk of infecting or overburdening the NHS or whatever it might be. There's other people who have a very different perspective on that. Now, I don't think we gain anything by dismissing people who want life to continue again, by dismissing those people as saying you don't care about human life. I don't think we gain anything by responding that way. In the same way that I don't think we gain anything by saying people who want the lockdown to continue are just lazy and want to stay at home and sunbathe. I think we need to understand where one another's coming from in order to enrich our own understanding and also to better be able to see the different perspectives which come into play on issues. So that all starts, Yann, sorry, with self-awareness, that we don't know everything, right? I don't know everything. And my opinion on the lockdown is based on my experiences and my upbringing and things that I've gone through as a parent and as a son and as a brother and as a friend, and also from the things that I've seen on social media. Like these things all throw in and put me in a place where I can't always see things clearly, and it's important to understand that we're all in a bit of a fog in a lot of areas, and we need
Yes.
we need to look for the light where we can see it, I think.
Yes, that's a very good point. You know, look for the life where we can see it. Absolutely. You know, so the interesting thing that came across from your article, because you know your article has been kind of branded as like the history part of the magazine. You know? And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the aspect of history, because you've studied history, and I'm interested to see how that study of history has affected the way that you interact with the modern society, or the way that you view the modern society. And first of all, what is history in your opinion? You know, from your perspective, what is history? Let's start there, and then let's elaborate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be sort of clear, and what I would consider a little demonstration of self-awareness, is that I'm very much a hobbyist when it comes to history. So I did do a history degree and I did a master's degree. However, I don't work in that field for my day job, but I retain quite an active interest in studying history, and a lot of the things that I listen to and a lot of the things that I read would relate to history. Now, thinking back to my undergraduate degree, there's probably only one book that I actually remember specifically, really the meat of the message that came from that book, and that book was entitled "What is History?" And the writer of that book, a chap called E.H. Carr, he argued, and it's a perspective that I completely agree with, is that anybody who's trying to grab on to sort of an absolute historical narrative is probably going to fail in the study of history. What history is taking the facts that we know from the past and interpreting them. And once again, we come back round to self-awareness. Our interpretation is always going to be influenced or informed by where we're starting from. If we're able to overcome that, that's really positive. And if we are able to overcome our own biases and our own prejudices and our own starting point, I think that opens our eyes to a much richer experience in looking at history. But unfortunately, we're all kind of handicapped in that respect. We're all kind of held back from really grabbing on, because we all bring our own stuff to the table. He compares it in the book to if you're talking about historical facts, they're like the fish that you might buy in a marketplace. Now you go and you buy your fish, you take it home and you season it, and you put it with rice or with potatoes, and you put lemon on it, or whatever you bring, that is what you then serve up. And that's what I've done in the article, right? So I've taken some widely accepted historical facts, I've taken some disputed historical facts, and I've created a narrative, if you like, or a theme, which is connected to historical figures. And that those themes are humility and self-awareness. Now, though the two incidents that I talk about from the lives of those two historical figures make up a tiny proportion of who they were, right? And I've deliberately chosen specific elements of their life to make a point. And that's what history is, I think. I think we can look back at things that have gone before and take lessons. But those lessons are as much informed about where we're starting from and what lessons we're looking for as what's actually there in the past.
Right. And so when we look at this through that perspective, how does that influence the way that you interact and engage with modern society today?
I think it's not to try to avoid being too repetitive on it. I think it is a case of gaining lessons about things that have gone before. I mean, one of the key things is it's so easy to dismiss or to boil down a person's existence to one or two characteristics or one or two incidents. I mentioned in the article that there's historical figures that we know today. There's a guy, Vladislav the Elbow High, right? And he was a Polish king who actually did a lot to establish what is modern Poland, and he was a really great ruler. But we know him today as Vladislav the Elbow High because he was quite short, right? And this guy's whole life has been diluted, if you like, or the essence of that man for a lot of people is that he was quite short. Yeah. And I think, you know, it's a trap we fall into with those around us. You know, if we're out on the road driving and somebody cuts us up, we tell ourselves a big old story about that person, even though we have no idea why they've just done that or what else they do. You know, that could be somebody who in 99% of the aspects of their life is absolutely admirable and commendable, but because we've seen
yes, that's right.
We've seen a negative side of it.
Just 1%. Yeah,
absolutely, and we write each other.
Yeah, that's
off.
right.
You know, we write each other off.
And I think that's a very powerful way of looking at.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah, that's right. Sorry, it was cutting a little bit. Yes, and yes, I think we're guilty. I think, you know, it's a very unfair way. When you put it like that, it's very unfair to. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. When you put it like that, it's very unfair. It's a very unfair thing the way to look at it. But isn't it just a human way of looking at it, you know? Because I think, you know, that's part of the flaws of being human. The fact that we, as you mentioned, we don't have the absolute truth about, you know, anybody. We don't have the absolute truth about anything. We just focus on what we know, what we see at the moment, albeit right or wrong, you know, at the time.
Yeah, and we have to make judgments. We have to make judgments. We have to make judgments based on what we see, and I think what I would like to see more of is people trying harder to see good. Rather than seeing something that's maybe a negative and grabbing onto that and writing somebody else off completely because of that one element of their life.
Yes, and I think that's a very powerful thing that, you know, humankind as a whole can learn from, you know, definitely. And so coming back to, you know, the concept of masculinity, you know, I want to kind of touch a little bit about generations, because it's something that we kind of talked about. You know, when you talk about judgment, the concept of judgment and generation. In our current society, you know, we're known as the generation that is doing the best, that's doing the most, okay? That's what the branding of the current millennial generation. Now, my thinking on that is, isn't there a danger for us to completely, you know, to judge and to feel like we're even better than our predecessors? Isn't there a danger that we fall into that and actually miss the aspect of learning the lessons that we need from those that came before us? Because regardless of which way you look at it, there are fantastic lessons that we can take from the people that came before us. Are we too judgmental? Do we feel like we're better than the generation of men that came before us? Our fathers, our grandfathers, our great-grandfathers. What are your thoughts on that?
I think absolutely. Well, I don't like to generalize, but I think there is a big element of that going on at the moment. You know, I think 2019, there were 3 or 4 nations of the world where the phrase of the year was "Okay, Boomer," right? Which is if there's a phrase which kind of sums up what you're saying, it's that phrase, right? It's that, yeah, you don't understand because you're over 60 years old. What would you know about goodness? What would you know about respect for humanity? What would you know
political correctness?
about political correctness? And obviously, there is an element where, as a society and as a people, we are pushing towards something, right? We are trying to progress one another, and we're trying to move forward as a people and as men, right? We're trying to get ourselves to a better place, and goodness knows,
Yes,
we need it, right? There are changes that need to be made, and that change requires young people, brave young people, to stand up and to say their message, absolutely, and to put their foot down and say, this isn't acceptable anymore. We're making these changes. However, our predecessors have done a lot of things to get us to this place. We in a lot of ways stand on their shoulders in this effort. You know, that the generations that have come before did a heck of a lot for equality in terms of race, in terms of gender, in terms of sexuality. There's been so much progress made by the generations that have gone before that it feels unfair to now dismiss whatever they've got to say and to assume that they've got nothing positive to add, and that we sit here kind of smugly and arrogantly saying, yes, but now it's 2020 and you don't understand the world anymore, and you don't know what good is. And that's something that it really doesn't sit well with me. Like the okay boomer thing is just the perfect example to me. So
absolutely. I mean, we're in our early 30s, me and you, but even when I speak to people that are 10 years younger than us, I still get this, I already start to get this sense, where it's like, oh, well, we're this generation here. You guys don't know what we're talking about. We're the people who are doing this. So that judgment is already starting to happen towards us. We're just in our early 30s, and we're actually part of that millennial generation. I think we're like the last, to kind of be part of that, but, it's definitely happening. And I can kind of feel that. And that, in that sense, I do feel like it's fair because, guys, you need those that came before you, whether you want to or not. You need those that came before you, because you're only there because we were there. We were there. You're only there because we started the things that you're taking up today, for the most part, And I think that needs to be recognized. There's a lot that we can learn from those that came before us. So my next question is, what do you think that we as men today can learn from our fathers, our grandfathers? What kind of characteristics? So we talk about virtues and characteristics. What are some of the main traits and characteristics that you wish for us to keep from our predecessors? And it's kind of interesting that I'm asking because you did a video, the mini video that you did.
Yeah.
You kind of spoke about that. So I'm interested to hear you develop that.
Now, just before I say this, I don't want to suggest that anything I'm about to say is unique only to men, right? And I know that these virtues appear regularly in women and are also just as valuable in women. However, I think certain things the first thing that I thought of there was bravery and courage. Now, the bravery or courage that we're I think required to display today is maybe a different kind of bravery than was required in 1939 when generations before went off to war. It's a different bravery that's required now to stand up and put your flag in the ground and say, this is a principle that I'm fighting for, or this is a principle that I stand for and that I believe in, and that I think we all need to understand, and we all need to accept and the world will become a better place if we do so. I think bravery and courage, and that aspect also of protectiveness, if you like. Obviously, the man's role traditionally in a family or in a home has been to provide for the physical needs of the family and to protect the family. And while obviously the equality of the genders is a great thing, and I think the steps made by women and by men to accept women to contribute in different areas of life, and vice versa, men contributing in what would traditionally have been seen as the women's roles. I think that's all great and fantastic. I do, however, think there is a place for men to stand up and look to protect those around them who could benefit from that, who need protection. And we are, I think, not particularly based on the fact that we are men, but each of us has a contribution to make in that respect. Each of us has something to give in looking around and seeing how they can help others and how they can look to those less fortunate and those who need assistance.
Absolutely. It's quite interesting. There was this funny anecdote that came to me as you were talking about protecting and being manly and protecting. I work with women, I'm the only man in the department. And, I'm like, I'm always like very protective because that's just how I was brought up. We've got sisters and whatever. And my role has always been to be the protector. And so I'm just like, oh, are you okay? Like I'm always playing that role. And then one of them was like, why do you feel like you need to protect us? And I said, but because that's my role. I was like, well, no, I can protect myself. I don't need a man to protect me.
Yeah.
And I felt very redundant when she said that. And I thought, wow, is that really where we're at now? I mean, I'm part of that generation, and especially being of African descent, these are things that we're instilled. Like, you're the man, you protect, you provide and things like that. But that's been challenged nowadays. It's challenged. I want people to recognize that. I want people to embrace that, especially women. I want them to see this as me. It's something that I'm giving to them. It's not anything that I'm using it controlling form, because I think that's the way it comes across. But it's more like, I'm giving that to you and I'm offering myself in that respect, but it's a very hot potato.
Yeah, no, and I think it's important to be sensitive of why someone might react in that way. But I do, I think it's a shame if we can't look to serve, or to use a very outdated word, to be chivalrous, right? To be to use traditional manners that a man would and look, like you were saying, the word serve, to give. I think it's a shame if we're in a place where we can't do any of that. But I do think it's important to understand why people may reject it.
Yeah, because it was always these things have been tainted. It's been tainted with control, because that a lot of the time that's what it was. So I completely understand. But if there's any ladies watching this right now, just know that we want to love on you. We want to protect you. We want to be your knight in shining armor. I'm going to get pinned to the cross for saying this. Using that imagery, but I don't care. Come for me, it's fine. I like controversy. We want to give you these things because we love you. We just want to give them, not control. That's nothing to do with that. I'm lucky that my wife is part of that same generation, with the same age, that relishes and loves that kind of stuff. So it gives me that opportunity to give that. I'm thankful for that.
that's the thing, Yann, is right. I think specifically our generation are in quite a difficult spot, in that I was brought up in school, ladies before gentlemen, hold the door for the girls. These things were kind of like repeated messages, and to some extent drilled into me. And those things over time became I guess important moral actions that I chose to live by, because I valued showing how much I appreciate women. But again, it's unfortunately become potentially problematic, and I hope that again, there's enough understanding on the sides of where we're coming from, you know, where those actions are coming from. I've just thought about, there was an article in the most recent edition. I forget who wrote it, but I think it was towards the end, and he was talking about people who ask him where he comes from.
Wilfred, yeah.
Wilfred, yeah. And that I thought it was a great article, and it was really enlightening, because I've done that so many times, right? And it's never ever come from a, yes, you're not really British. It's never come from a superior position at all. It's always come from a understanding and trying to get to know a person, and trying to I guess enrich my own understanding of the world. And I'd never really considered the discomfort that might bring to somebody else. And I think I suppose what I'm saying is, hands up, I think we're all guilty of making these faux pas. You know, we make these mistakes.
Yeah.
We make these mistakes. We try sometimes to do things from a good place, which maybe bring out a negative response in people. And if we can try to be understanding with each other as we navigate this, I think it puts us all in a better position.
Absolutely. You know, so you know, it's some very, very interesting points for food for thought there, because that's what it's all about. You know, the open door platform is for conscious. You know, it's for, you know, these issues to be brought to the fore and to talk about. You know, like, you know, we're just sitting there talking about how you know, I was reprimanded, how you feel about certain things. And I don't mind controversy when we have this conversation. I just want to say, because that's what this is about. If we avoid the subjects or the things that make us uncomfortable, then we're not really scratching the surface. And that's not, it doesn't fit in with the conscious ideology that this platform is about. And so I wanted to finish with by asking, you know, in light of everything that we've spoken about, what do you think, where is this place for the conscious man today? Because to me, when we talk about humility, self-awareness, and all these values and these virtues, it equals to consciousness. It equals to, you know, a man that is conscious, somebody that is conscious. So in your position, in your perspective, where's the place of the conscious man today, 2020?
The place of the conscious man.
Yeah,
I think there has to be a beginning with understanding. I think is it always seeking to better understand the world and the people who we share it with. I think is a massively important starting place. And then once we start to understand things, I think it gives us the opportunity to act and to contribute and to do things. And I think where we have opportunity to do so, I think it's important that a conscious man does what he can to make the world around him a better place. Now that's obviously quite cheesy and a little bit twee, but there's a lot of things that we can do as men to contribute to the betterment of our neighborhoods, our families, our towns, our societies, and I think the conscious man is compelled to do those things.
Absolutely. And I see it as a mission that we have. And that's why this platform was created. I wanted like-minded individuals to come together that kind of not agree on everything, but that have that streak of, I am not perfect, but I want to come and I want to enrich myself and I want to make this world a better place and be conscious of my place and my contribution towards that. And so it's a beautiful thing for us to be able to reflect on this and to have that in the back of our minds, you know, subconsciously of everything that we do. And so, John, I just want to thank you, you know, because we spent a good time, you know, talking about, you know, these themes and these important aspects of the way that we see life and, you know, as men. And, you know, to all you viewers or listeners out there, you know, this is what, like I said, this is what this platform is about. You know, if you want to, I think you should definitely, you know, connect with the magazine, you know, be able to read John's article if you haven't already. If you're watching this and you've had some questions about what you read, please drop them below, and then sure John will be happy to answer. But you know, our first edition is out already. It's on Amazon. Go over, head over. Fantastic, diverse, you know, eclectic kind of mix of articles and contribution. Absolutely beautiful. So, John, I thank you so much for another fantastic article.
No, you're welcome.
Hello?
And I just said hello. You're welcome. I just second everything you've said there, Yann. You know, reading through the magazine, it was that was the main takeaway was the new perspectives that it gave me, right? And some of the things I agreed with straight away, other things I sort of questioned straight away. But it's all understanding different people's perspectives, which is what it's all about to me.
That's it. That's it. So thank you so much, John, and for all you listeners and viewers, watch out for the next conversation that we're going to have. It's going to be on our
Great.